What if a single mistake, one awkward hug, changed your life forever? Ethan's day started like any other, but by the end of it, nothing would ever be the same. If you don't want to miss any more life-changing stories like this, make sure to hit that subscribe button. And while you're at it, drop a comment below. Where are you watching from? Ethan Harper, a 32-year-old tech entrepreneur, stood in the heart of New York City, his gaze scanning the crowded streets. As the CEO of a rapidly growing tech company, life was moving fast. The city felt like it was constantly on the move, and Ethan, in his tailored suit and polished shoes, was no exception. But today, he wasn't thinking about his next big business deal. He was thinking about Grace, his younger sister, who had gone missing in the chaotic sea of commuters. The Grand Central Station was a maze, and as usual, Grace had a knack for slipping through the crowd unnoticed. Ethan, frustrated and anxious, checked his watch. He had an important meeting in less than an hour. "Where is she?" he muttered under his breath. It wasn't like her to be late. In a moment of distraction, Ethan spotted a figure ahead, someone in a mustard yellow sweater and a messy bun just like Grace. Without thinking, he rushed over and, arms open wide, grabbed the woman from behind. "Gotcha. You're late again, Grace," he said, pulling her into an embrace. But the woman didn't respond as expected. Instead, she whipped around, eyes wide with surprise, and something else, something like annoyance. And just like that, Ethan realized he'd made a massive mistake. Ethan froze, his arms still awkwardly wrapped around the woman in the yellow sweater. The moment felt like it had stretched into slow motion, but reality hit him like a freight train when the woman pushed him off with force. "Excuse me?" she snapped, her voice sharp, filled with disbelief. Her brown eyes were flashing with irritation as she stepped back, putting several feet of space between them. Ethan, still trying to process what had just happened, stammered, I thought you were my sister. I'm sorry, I didn't mean..." The woman crossed her arms, clearly unamused. "Do I look like your sister?" she demanded, her tone dripping with sarcasm. Ethan's face went crimson as he desperately tried to recover from his blunder. No, you don't. I was looking for her, and She shook her head, cutting him off with a scoff. "I can't believe this," she muttered, more to herself than to him. Her expression softened slightly, but the annoyance didn't entirely fade. "Whatever. Just next time try using your eyes before you go grabbing random people, okay?" Ethan opened his mouth to apologize again, but was cut short by the voice of his younger sister, Grace. "Ethan, what the hell are you doing?" Grace was approaching from a distance, a confused look on her face. She stopped beside him, glancing at the woman in yellow. "Wait, this isn't... Who are you?" Grace asked, half laughing, half stunned. The woman, now clearly realizing the mix-up, looked between them. She raised an eyebrow, her expression shifting from irritation to something more amused. "I'm just the victim of this man's mistaken identity," she replied dryly, shooting Ethan a pointed look. "Well, I think you two already have some chemistry," Grace quipped, nudging her brother playfully. "Maybe you should ask her out, Ethan." Ethan, still mortified, wasn't sure if he should laugh or apologize again. Before he could say anything, the woman in yellow gave them both a skeptical look, then turned and walked away, shaking her head. Ethan stood there feeling like a fool. Grace, who had been trying not to laugh, finally spoke, her voice softening. "Seriously though, are you okay? You've got to stop embarrassing yourself like this." But Ethan's mind wasn't on Grace's teasing. It was on the woman he had just humiliated. Something about her, her sharp wit and confident presence, lingered in his thoughts. As she disappeared into the crowd, he couldn't help but wonder, who was she? And how could he have gotten it so wrong? Ethan couldn't shake the encounter from his mind. The woman in the mustard yellow sweater had left a lasting impression on him, despite the awkwardness of their first meeting. He found himself replaying the moment over and over, each time cringing a little more. He had no idea why it bothered him so much, but something about her sharpness, her confidence, the way she carried herself, he was intrigued. It wasn't just about the mistake, it was about her. That night, as Ethan sat at his desk at Harper Tech, preparing for an important presentation, he kept thinking back to that moment. Why couldn't I have just apologized and left it at that? He wondered. But instead of feeling embarrassed, there was a strange sense of curiosity gnawing at him. Who was she? And what made her react that way? The next day, the universe seemed to be playing a cruel joke on him. Ethan was on his way to an important client meeting when his assistant buzzed him. "Ethan, we've got an interesting candidate for the open marketing position. Her name's Olivia Carter. She's actually coming in for an interview this afternoon." Ethan's heart skipped a beat. Olivia Carter. He looked up from his desk, his mind reeling. Could it be? Was it possible that the woman he'd hugged by mistake was the same Olivia Carter who had applied for the job at Harper Tech? The name sounded so familiar, and the timing was too perfect to be a coincidence. A wave of nerves washed over him. Could this be fate or just another twist in his already chaotic day? He pushed the thought aside, trying to focus on his presentation. But no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't get Olivia out of his head. By the time the afternoon rolled around, Ethan found himself pacing back and forth in his office, waiting for the interview to start. When Olivia walked in, dressed in a smart business suit, her posture straight and professional, Ethan almost didn't recognize her. The woman who had looked so irritated in the crowded station now stood before him, calm, composed, and undeniably confident. But as she shook his hand and greeted him, there was something in her eyes, a flicker of recognition, a hint of something unspoken. And in that moment, Ethan realized Olivia knew exactly who he was. "Well, this is unexpected," she said with a wry smile. "You're the hugger from Grand Central." Ethan's heart sank. Olivia's words hit him like a cold wave, and for a moment, he was frozen. She remembered the awkward encounter. Of course she did. How could she forget he had practically launched himself at her in front of a crowded station? Now, here she was sitting across from him in a polished office, poised and confident, as if she hadn't been the victim of his blunder. Olivia's smirk was playful, but there was an edge to it that Ethan couldn't ignore. "Well, I didn't expect to see you again, but here we are," she said, her tone laced with dry humor. Ethan tried to recover his composure, his face flushing red as he stammered, I'm so sorry about that. I didn't realize." "I know," she interrupted, holding up a hand. "It's fine, I get it. You were looking for your sister, and I happened to be in your way." Her smile softened for a moment, and she added, "But next time a simple excuse me would work just fine." Ethan chuckled awkwardly, his nervousness still palpable. But as the conversation moved forward, he began to notice something that hadn't been apparent before. Olivia wasn't just confident and clever. She was sharp in a way that Ethan found exhilarating. She had a quick wit and a presence that commanded attention. As she spoke about her experience and why she was interested in the marketing position, Ethan found himself intrigued not just by her resume, but by the way she approached challenges. She was pragmatic, thoughtful, and direct, with a refreshing honesty. Despite their earlier awkwardness, Ethan realized that he was genuinely enjoying their conversation. There was an undeniable spark between them, something beyond the first impression of a mistaken hug. She wasn't just a random woman in a yellow sweater anymore. She was Olivia Carter, someone who could challenge him, make him think differently, and if he was being honest with himself, someone he wanted to get to know better. By the time the interview ended, Ethan felt a strange sense of excitement mixed with a healthy dose of uncertainty. Olivia had agreed to move forward with the next steps in the hiring process, but Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't just about the job. It was about something more. As she walked out of his office, Ethan stood there for a moment, processing the unexpected shift in his perception of her. He couldn't help but wonder if this was just the beginning of something far bigger than either of them had planned. The next few days passed in a blur, but one thing remained at the forefront of Ethan's mind: Olivia. It wasn't just her sharp intellect or her professionalism that stood out, but the way she had made him feel. There was something magnetic about her presence, a mixture of confidence and mystery that made him curious to know more. But beyond the attraction, there was also a deep respect for her skills. Ethan had been impressed by her during the interview, and her direct approach had made him think twice about his own leadership style. A week later, Ethan received a message from his HR department. Olivia had officially accepted the offer to join Harper Tech as the new marketing director. It was a victory for the company, and Ethan couldn't help but feel a sense of pride. She had all the qualities they needed, and he was eager to see how she would transform the team. Still, a part of him was also eager to see more of her, not just in the office, but outside of it. Their first few weeks working together were anything but smooth. There were the usual workplace challenges, late nights, tight deadlines, and a whirlwind of meetings. But as time passed, Ethan and Olivia found themselves collaborating more and more. She wasn't afraid to challenge his ideas, and surprisingly, he didn't mind. In fact, he began to appreciate it. Olivia wasn't just a subordinate, she was an equal, someone whose opinions he valued. One particular project stuck in his mind. They were brainstorming ideas for a new marketing campaign, and as usual, Olivia brought a fresh perspective to the table. She was bold, unafraid to push boundaries, and didn't shy away from unconventional ideas. "Why not go viral?" she suggested one day. "Let's create something that shocks people, makes them feel something real." Ethan had to admit he was skeptical, but her enthusiasm was contagious, and soon they were working together in ways that neither had expected. The campaign they designed was unlike anything Harper Tech had ever done. It was edgy, playful, and daring. When it launched, it took off immediately, garnering attention from all over the tech world. As the weeks passed, Ethan's admiration for Olivia grew, not just as a colleague, but as someone who challenged him, made him better, and in many ways brought out a side of him he hadn't known was there. He found himself looking forward to their daily interactions, not just because of work, but because of the unexpected connection that had blossomed between them. Still, despite the growing tension between them, Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that he was walking a fine line. He knew that as his colleague, Olivia deserved his respect, and maybe, just maybe, something more. As the months went by, Ethan's relationship with Olivia grew beyond mere professional respect. They were becoming more than just colleagues. They were becoming partners in a way that was unexpected, and in some cases a little confusing. Olivia's ideas had revolutionized the marketing department at Harper Tech. Under her leadership, the team had become more creative, daring, and willing to take risks. Ethan had learned to trust her instincts even when they clashed with his own. It wasn't just the work that was changing between them, though. Ethan found himself spending more time with Olivia outside of the office. It started casually grabbing coffee after late-night work sessions, or discussing strategies over dinner, but soon those small moments began to feel different. They shared stories about their lives, about their childhoods, their families, their personal struggles, and Ethan realized how much he was learning about her. She was more than just the confident, sharp professional he had first met. She was someone with depth, someone who carried a quiet strength that Ethan admired. One evening, after a particularly grueling workday, Ethan invited Olivia to grab a drink at a nearby bar. She hesitated at first, but then agreed, her smile warm but guarded. As they sat down, he noticed how easy the conversation flowed between them, how comfortable they had become in each other's presence. There was no pretense, no work talk, just two people sharing a quiet moment. "I used to think I had everything figured out," Ethan admitted, his voice slightly lowered. "But since I met you, I don't know. I feel like you're teaching me how to really see things, how to be better." Olivia's eyes softened, but she didn't respond right away. Instead, she took a sip of her drink as if considering his words. "It's funny," she said after a moment. "I've always been the type of person who prefers to keep things at arm's length. I've learned the hard way not to get too close to people, but somehow you make it easy to just be." Ethan felt his heart skip a beat. There was something about her openness that struck a chord with him. He realized then that the connection between them had grown into something real. They had shared vulnerabilities that neither of them had intended, and yet it felt natural. He wasn't just attracted to her anymore, he respected her, admired her, and dare he admit it, cared for her. But even as they sat there, the air between them thick with unspoken feelings, neither of them had yet voiced the truth of what was developing between them. The lines between professional and personal had blurred, and though they both felt it, neither was ready to cross that line completely. Yet Ethan couldn't help but wonder, was this just a fleeting connection, or was it the start of something that would change the course of both their lives? The turning point came during a company-wide event. It was the biggest product launch of the year for Harper Tech, and Ethan had been tasked with giving the keynote speech. The room was packed with industry leaders, investors, and employees, all eagerly awaiting his presentation. Ethan, as always, was poised and confident, speaking about the company's growth and the future of tech. But as he stood on stage, something felt different. His thoughts kept drifting away from the presentation to Olivia, who was seated in the front row. She had become an integral part of his life, someone he admired, someone who had challenged him to be better in ways he hadn't expected. Yet despite the growing tension between them, Ethan had never expressed his feelings. There was always the unspoken barrier, the line between professional respect and personal attraction. He wasn't sure if it was the right time, or if it was even appropriate, but the moment felt charged, as if the universe was pushing him toward something he couldn't ignore. As he neared the end of his speech, Ethan paused. The room fell silent, waiting for his closing words, but instead of finishing with his usual corporate rhetoric, something inside him shifted. He looked out over the crowd, but his eyes found Olivia's immediately. Her gaze was steady, her expression unreadable yet somehow encouraging. Ethan took a deep breath, and without thinking twice, he said, "Before I finish, there's something I need to say. Something that's been on my mind for a while now." His voice faltered slightly, but he pressed on. "There's been someone who's made all of this journey, this company feel different. And it's not just because of her work, though, that's remarkable in itself. It's because of who she is, what she stands for, and how she's made me see the world in a new light." The audience was quiet, unsure where he was going with this. Ethan's heart pounded in his chest, but he couldn't back down now. "Olivia Carter, I want to thank you for your brilliance, for your drive, and for the way you've inspired me. And I've realized that it's not just your mind that I admire, it's you, all of you." There was a stunned silence in the room. Ethan stepped down from the stage, walking toward Olivia. Her face was a mix of shock and something else, something softer. He stood in front of her, took her hand, and with the whole room watching, asked Olivia, Would you be willing to start something with me? Not just in business, but in life." The moment hung in the air, and for a heartbeat, everything was still. Then slowly, Olivia's lips curled into a smile. "Yes, Ethan," she said, her voice full of warmth. "Yes, I would." The crowd erupted in applause, but all Ethan could hear was Olivia's answer, clear and sure. And in that moment, he knew that everything had changed. The risks, the mistakes, the misunderstandings, they had all led him here, to this moment, this choice, and this future with Olivia. Ethan had taken a chance, had stepped out of his comfort zone, and it had paid off in a way he never could have imagined. He had found not just a colleague, but a partner, and together they would build something even greater than what either of them had achieved alone. This was the beginning of a new chapter in both their lives, one filled with uncertainty but also with boundless possibility. And for the first time, Ethan felt certain of one thing: he wasn't walking alone anymore. As Ethan and Olivia stood together, ready to face whatever came next, they both understood the powerful lesson life had taught them. Sometimes the unexpected moments, the awkward encounters, the mistakes and the missteps can lead to the most meaningful connections. Ethan had spent his life carefully planning his moves, But it was in that moment of vulnerability, when he let his guard down and took a chance, that everything changed. Life doesn't always follow a perfect script. Sometimes it's the detours that bring us to the place we're meant to be. Ethan had learned that embracing the unknown, stepping out of his comfort zone and allowing himself to be vulnerable, had opened the door to a future he couldn't have imagined. In the end, Ethan and Olivia's story wasn't just about business success. It was about the importance of taking risks, seizing unexpected opportunities, and finding love in the most unlikely places. Want more heartwarming and inspirational stories? Make sure to like, subscribe, and comment below. Tell us, what lesson did you learn from Ethan and Olivia's journey? Your thoughts could inspire someone today.